Welcome, everyone. Today is Thursday, April 10th, 2025. This is class three. We're going to do a very quick course on JavaScript today. But before we jump into class, there's a question that was brought up about not waiting to the end of the course to apply to jobs. And I think it's a really great question. And the encouragement that I will give you officially and unofficially is the whole point of this program is to get you a foot in the door in the tech world. Now, if you can manage that a week into class, I suggest you drop the class and you take the job, right? Because the goal isn't to get certificates. Like, I don't know if you guys ever see this on LinkedIn or Twitter. People will just keep posting about all the certificates that they got. You need a job, a tech job. No one cares about your 37 certificates. Make sense? The goal of school is not to go to school for school's sake, right? Is for you to actualize something. Something has to come out of it, right? So that's the recommendation I would give you. Typically, people don't have the necessary skills early on, right? But past your personal project, and this is the advice I would have given you even weeks from now. The minute that you finish your personal project, I would go heads down on trying to find a job because the only thing left is a group project, and the group project is not required to graduate, right? So only the personal project, that's the last assessment. So if you can close out, and I always recommend if you can finish the personal project early, finish it, go heads on trying to find that next tech job, right? Because ideally, you really do want that group project, but you want the job more. So the group project's a moot point. You can learn on the job while someone's paying you, right? As opposed to, burning through your own cash and, spending extra hours on top of your, 40-hour work day. I mean, a 40-hour work week, right? It's a lot of hours, right? I know I get tired. I work and I come here and I teach, and I only do it two, 3 times a week. You guys got to do it 4 days a week, right? That's a lot. Make sense? So that's what I would do. If you have the energy to continue to look and improve your skills, and it only takes you 8 of the weeks instead of 28 or 20, whatever it takes, no one here will be upset. That's the whole point. We're glad we've played a very, very small role in helping you or pointing you in the right direction, right? But typically, students don't have the skills yet, and they need career services. But some people don't. Some people actually, there's only been one student that's ducked out that I've known in the 3 years I've been here that's managed that. They ducked out like 4 or 5 weeks early. But yeah, they ended up taking a position, and we wish them the best of luck, right? Because that's the right answer. Make sense? Alrighty. Uh, how are we doing with Git
Managing.
managing? Do you guys have any questions? Any like broad questions that might help anyone else that I might be able to answer before we get started? Okay, this is a very popular newbie interview question. What's the difference between Git and GitHub? Anyone can chime in.
Is GitHub it's what you go to like online. That's where you can actually see it. And then Git, is that what you run in your terminal? Is that have
Yes, you have the right concept, but I need you to be a little bit more specific because you can actually see the Git differences locally too if you wanted to. And even, I mean, it's not very user friendly, but you could see it in the terminal. You could do a Git diff amongst branches or cat changes or something. But you're very close. We need to be very specific with what's the difference. Keyword is
uh
local for one of them, but the remote one, right? It's on the internet. So what's the difference?
is Git your machine?
Yeah,
Git's on your machine, and then
yeah,
GitHub is the server.
there you go. It's a remote repository, right? So that's the thing you have to understand. Git is local to your machine, right? GitHub is quote unquote in the cloud, in the server. When people say the cloud is just somebody else's computer, there is no cloud, right? And a server is just someone else's computer typically. I mean, it could be yours in your closet, like I said. That'd be kind of a weird thing, but yeah, you could have one in your closet if you wanted to. Nothing stops you. Okay? So keep that in mind. Remember the changes that you have locally, unless you've pushed them to the remote repository, will always remain local, right? Now, if you delete something locally that was never in your remote repository, then it's gone forever. Keep that in mind. Now, however, if you delete something locally, but that branch was synced to a remote repository, you can just pull it down, right? And it's not lost, right? So keep that in mind. Any changes that are local must be synced to your remote repository if you want them there, or if you don't want to run the risk of maybe deleting a branch or your computer being destroyed in a fire or something crazy, right? If everything was saved online, then there's levels of redundancy in the cloud and chances of you losing it are very small. Make sense? Alrighty. Cool, 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 cool. Continue practicing with it. I know it's not the easiest thing. It's something no one ever talks about because it's not sexy. No, it isn't. All right, today we're going to jump into JavaScript. I'm going to share my screen. See if I can pull this up. Okay. All right, what you want to have is you want to have just a file, like a JavaScript file, like an index JavaScript file, loaded up, something like, I'll go ahead and pull it up, something like this. So you could just practice. Like this is what I have. I just literally created a folder, called it practice, and I have one index.js file in there. That's it. So if you want to load something like that, we'll run through some examples here. All right, so JavaScript review. You should be relatively familiar with a lot of the syntax, but this is just a very, very broad overview. It was created by some guy you don't need to know. With the creation of Node by Google a couple years ago, and I'm not gonna touch on this because we're gonna get we're gonna get into this, right, Node at the end of this lesson, right? The first thing, right, that we want to focus on is data types. What's a data type? Anyone know? What's a data type?
Just a way information is shown, like if it's an integer or a string.
Yeah. How many different data types do you know? There's there's integers. There's what?
Strings,
Strings.
booleans.
Ah,
No?
yeah. I
Okay.
just did something wrong. There you go. Strings, Boolean. What else?
Floats?
Floats. Yep. Which is just a decimal, right?
Yeah.
Decimal with the E or an A. I don't even know. Decimal. Sure. Integer, strings, Booleans, floats,
Arrays.
arrays. Objects. Null, the data type, right? These are data types.
Uh, is null just nothing? Like it doesn't have a value?
It doesn't have a value. Yeah,
Oh,
nothing is the value, right? It's like the invention of zero. It's not a number. Of course it is. It's the absence of value. That is something, right? It's like when people say, oh, he didn't do anything. Not doing something is an action if it was intentional, right? It's like you're stuck between two subways and you get skinny, so neither of them hits you. You don't move. That is a move, right? I don't know why I thought of that. Anyway, yeah. So data types are something really, really, really important, right? Sometimes I'll have someone do this. Uh, um, ah, let's do let some bar equal some guy, right? And someone will do this. Uh, and then they'll go into trying to map this. And then they'll do something. What's wrong with line 13?
It's not an iterable object.
Yeah, it's not iterable, right? This is an immutable data type, right? This is a string, and strings are immutable, right? This person doesn't understand. This happens all the time to noobs, right? This tells me that you don't understand data types, so you understand that this is immutable, right? And this only works on what data types? Map only works on what data types?
Is it integers?
No,
No.
it works on individual integers, but it can only work on,
Objects.
don't say objects for right now, Cisco, because everything is
Okay.
an object. And I don't want to, I don't want to show you the meme, right?
Okay. Yeah. It only works on I don't know how to
Yeah, I don't want
it,
to get into this meme here.
Maybe, maybe
We'll,
arrays.
yeah, we'll get into this meme later, actually.
oh yeah.
For all intended purposes, for right now, an object is just the data structure objects with key-value pairs for now. We'll get
Okay.
into everything else later. That's way more, that's outside of the scope of this lesson at the moment, right?
Yeah.
So map is only going to work on things like arrays, right? Because arrays are mutable,
Mhm.
right? So this is actually a really important concept that's not in this lesson, but mutability versus immutability is really important in programming. Does anybody know why? I actually don't even know how to spell mutability, to be honest.
It's a-
Does anybody know why? Why is this really important? This is actually one of the most important concepts in programming. Does anyone know why?
It gives you the ability to edit one versus something that can't change at all.
Yeah, something, right? Very good. It allows you to edit something, right? Versus something that can't be edited, right? So if I have a list that's 1, 2, 4, 6, right? If I have this list right here, let some list. When I say list, array, interchangeable in this context, right? If I do some list, I can push, I can push the number 10 into it, right? And if I print some list, I'm gonna have 1, 2, 4, 6, 10, right? Right? Because this is mutable, so I can add to it, right? Uh, but let's say I had let some string equals hello, right? And I wanted to do something like some string plus equals hello world, right? And I console log some string. What's going to be the output here? If I run line 27, what's going to be the output here?
going to be an error.
No, it's not going to be an error.
It's just gonna be hello, isn't it? Or
No, I'm just going to add to it, right? It's just going to be hello world.
Yeah.
oh yeah, because you don't have a space yet.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
So
just
what
string
happened?
plus string.
Yeah. What happened? Did I add to that string?
No, you created
You changed
another.
the string.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got it right, Cisco. All right. So this is known as concatenation, right? And sometimes people take it as, oh, you just added two strings. It's kind of a misnomer. Oh, it's not kind of a misnomer. It is a misnomer, right? Because you can't add two strings. Strings are immutable. You can only erase both strings and create a new string, right? So you, at the end of our program, I hope you understand these programming languages at that level, right? And what I'm about to tell you next, you don't really need to know, right? But if they ask you some kind of slightly harder question in an interview, it would help you, right? What's happening under the hood, and you don't necessarily need to know this, but it's important in the grand scheme of things if you are to get a deep understanding of how programming languages work, is that when this is stored in memory, it allots more space than it needs because it makes it mutable and it gives extra bytes of space. So you can add to it when it's allocated in memory. Whereas something that's immutable, it has a finite amount of space, right? So even if you wanted to quote unquote add to it, you can't. It must be erased from memory, created somewhere else, and allocated enough bits for that string or that integer or that float, right? So deep in memory, that's what's happening. You don't need to necessarily understand that, but I just want you to understand this concept, right? Immutability versus immutability. Strings are immutable, integers are immutable, right? So in JavaScript is a little bit like the Wild West. It'll let you do stuff that other languages wouldn't, like something like this. What would be the output of this? Of line 31?
Be one hello.
Yeah, it'd be a string called one hello. What happened here in memory? Because they're both immutable types.
Why would it convert
Essentially,
the integer
oh,
to a string and then add it to the string?
It's called data coercion in JavaScript.
Oh.
Other languages won't let you do it, but JavaScript will let you do some weird things that you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
since the hello's immutable, it knew it can't add to it, but it can concatenate, so it just assumes one's a string as well, is essentially what's going on there, I assume.
Yes, but they're both immutable. That's exactly what's happening. You just more or less
Yeah.
described data coercion, right? But in memory, what's happening? I just kind of explained what would happen. They're both immutable. So
Well, it erases the old one and creates a new spot with that says
yeah,
one
it actually
hello.
erases both of them. Erases one
Well,
and
that's
erases hello.
that's what I mean.
And it just allocates the data type string, right, somewhere else in memory. That's it. Okay, so understand that. A lot of new programmers, they'll have a knack for some string, and they'll try to iterate over some string. So they'll do like, oh, I have it up here. I guess I don't have to copy it again. I use this. So they'll have something like this. Um, they'll have something like this, and they'll be like, oh, well, I need to iterate over it, right? So some string, and they'll try to split it by character, and then okay, for, and then they'll try to loop over it. And then I'll ask, well, why'd you split the string? And they're like, oh, I'm trying to iterate over it. And then I ask, you can't iterate over a string? No, this is just how I always do it. I just always split it into, this could be you, but I could be describing a lot of you right now. And that's okay. And they're like, no, that's just what I always do. And I said, you can iterate over a string, right? A string is iterable, right? So is a list. You just have to keep in mind that one is immutable and one is mutable, right? But people always default to what's easier. So they split every string, even though they don't necessarily need to, right? That tells me you haven't done enough coding. Because what I just explained is not that deep that you should probably know it. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So keep that in mind. So data types. If you didn't really understand all of this right now, totally okay. You'll get the hang of it. Just know that data types are important. And when things aren't going quite right, ask yourself, what kind of data types are you messing with, right? Other languages, right? You can specifically, you would have to declare the type. You'd be like some string, could be data type string, and then you write some string, right? But the prefix would be the data type, so no one can change it, right? Java works this way. A lot of other languages work that way. You don't have to do it in JavaScript or Python, but just know that be mindful of data types, because in JavaScript and Python, like you don't necessarily have to declare what data type it is, right? But in other languages you do, because you need to keep that in mind, because that's important, because that's how you introduce bugs in your code a lot of the time. You're trying to iterate over an immutable thing, and then everything's breaking. You don't know why. Okay, so data types, super important. This concept of mutability versus immutability. It's not specifically in the lesson, but it's part of data types. Some data types are mutable and some are immutable. Keep that in mind. This is string. Anybody know what this is known as? With the backticks?
String interpolation.
Yeah, string interpolation or template literals, I believe they're called in JavaScript. I can't remember which one's in Python and which one is in JavaScript, but you'll hear them interchangeably, just like when someone says a list or an array, they kind of mean the same thing. This mutable container, right? And this right here is giving, I could easily put some string in here, some string in here, and it would pull the variable some string and throw hello in here instead of that syntax. You just have to memorize the syntax. These are backticks. Backtick is below your escape button, top left-hand corner of your keyboard. So these are backticks right here. So that's a template string. Interpolation. Use interchangeably. This is exactly what I just described right there, except I did it with hello. References to MDN and W3 schools, great resources. MDN is like the Bible of the internet, pretty much. If you have any questions on JavaScript or anything web related, anything you would possibly think of is in here. W3 schools, I think a lot of the times a little easier to read. And I actually kind of like their website because they'll have like, you can do little exercises, try it yourself, and then you could, you can do it in here and run it. So dope. I'm sure you guys probably already ran into that, so I won't delve too much into it. Similar to most languages, integers are whole numbers, and then floats are decimals. I guess it's with an A. There you go. And a comment is //. I know sometimes people get confused with the // Just look at the top of the line. If it's leaning forward, it's a // If it's leaning back, it's a backslash. Make sense? Like this one, leaning back, backslash. This one, leaning forward, // Two of them is a comment. If you highlight a lot and press Command // it'll comment all of it. You can also use the other thing, which is true in, I want to say JavaScript and Python is the /*, and then all this is a comment. This is typically reserved for multi-line comments. But I think yeah, there's another way to do it. There's triple quotation marks too. I think that's in Python though. So just comments. You'll see this a lot, especially when part of a class or a function is doing something weird that's somewhat uncommon or complicated. They'll comment it, saying, "Hey, this is supposed to do this." Also, when you get to your job, they'll do a lot of that. They'll where am I? Here we go. They'll do a comment or something saying like to do, and then need function that parses API call one, whatever, right? And they'll put that in the code saying, "Hey, this still remains to be done." And sometimes they'll attach a Jira ticket to it, Jira 1134 or something. So you know, hey, this is being tracked, it hasn't been done yet. So comments are used a lot. Probably not enough, but that's how you do it. Comments. Oh, we talked about Booleans, true, false. Variable may have a value, but it's currently not defined. It's undefined. Typically, you won't see this that much. Typically, you'll see something like this. You'll see a variable that's defined, at least in JavaScript, and they'll put like a colon next to it saying, "Hey, this is not defined right now, but as my program runs, that will be assigned a value," right? So you'll see let, baby name. You'll never see this though. And you saw the ID flag it. Why?
Const means that it's going to be unchanging throughout the entire program.
Yeah, and that's impossible because you left it undefined. That's why it's flagging it. So I bet if I hover over this, it says const declarations must be initialized, right? Const, they have to be initialized, where this remains uninitialized. There isn't a value there yet. But if I let do it, so you notice it doesn't throw an error because it's saying, hey, we assume that as this program runs, you're going to initialize this variable to something. And that's totally fine. This works. You pretty much never see this. I don't know why this is in here, but I give you another example, so it's fine. No, a variable specifically has no value. You'll run into this, but almost exclusively as an error. Always. Like something in your function isn't being returned properly and you'll get nothing. So you'll get a null value. exception or something. Typically, you don't ever want to return null, ever, right? So you can have a function, some func, some bar, let cat sauce equal some cat, a lot more code, and then just to return something here. What happens when this function is called? What happens when this function is called?
Well, it's going to return. It's going to return none.
Is it going to return anything?
Hot sauce is
Well,
undefined, so it's not
it'll
gonna
be
return anything.
it'll be blank when you run it.
Will the function
Okay.
run?
Won't it error?
No, it's not going to error. There's nothing wrong with that
Which
function. It's written properly.
some cat. No, you got some bar and some cat, so it won't run because some bar is not even being some.
You
Well,
could
cat.
pass you could pass an argument into a function that's never used. It
So
won't throw an error.
will it come out hot sauce null?
No, it just ends. It runs a
No,
function. It does nothing. Well, I mean,
yeah.
I guess it initializes cat size, right? But it doesn't do anything, right? When people, you can return nothing, right? What happens when a function hits a return statement? It does what?
It's
It
a
returned to the beginning of the loop.
No, there's no loop in there.
Oh,
it just returns whatever you. Well, if you got a return
You're
statement
overthinking
there,
it. You're overthinking it. What happens when a function hits a return statement? It does what abruptly?
stops.
It
Ends.
stops.
Ends. Yeah.
Yeah, it ends. Whether it returns something or not, it stops. Done. Right? Sometimes, and I don't know who's teaching this, but I will see stuff like cat sauce. Someone's teaching this. I don't know who. Some other thing. And then they'll do a lot more code, and then more code, and then cat sauce. I'm misspelling everything, doesn't matter. Some other thing, more stuff. And then at the end, they'll return cat sauce. I know I misspelled everything, right?
Mhm.
And this is really common, and I don't know who's teaching this, but I see it all the time, right? So they'll reassign this variable that they initialize at the beginning through all of this code, right? I think someone's teaching you only have one return statement in a function, and that's not true. You can have 10 return statements in one function if that's what it calls for, right?
Yeah.
This is bad code because if some condition was met, and here's how you can tell like really good code, right? If there are some kind of edge cases in your code, right, it should return early, always. All edge cases, all edge cases should return early.
Right.
And why is that? Because if any of those edge cases are met, the rest of the code doesn't matter, right? So you return here one, whatever. You return here two, and if the rest of the code needs to run, right, you can return here done or whatever it is. It doesn't matter, right? So these people are doing, they're just reassigning it. And there's a very high likelihood that's running a bunch of code or attempting to run a bunch of code that's irrelevant for most cases. So why are you running it? You're wasting a lot of compute. And right now, compute doesn't matter to you at all, right? But when you get to your job, depending on how big these applications are, even small applications, sometimes we'll have hundreds of thousands of logs an hour, right? So you're talking a million or two a day. How many logs, how much compute, how much memory is being used? How big is that AWS bill, per month, right? People are going to worry about that stuff, right? And you have these long running processes, they're burning compute and burning memory. right? People are not going to be happy. Now, right now, it doesn't matter. And I know what I'm saying seems a little abstract because our files are like 10 lines, right? Even your final project, maybe your biggest file will be 300, 500 lines, right? But that's not true, right? When you have a real dev job, even with a small internal application that maybe only 20 people use, right? Right? If it's heavily used and people are building stuff on top of it, right? It can get out of hand quickly. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so null, typically you won't see this either. You'll see it initialized sometimes to null because there's no value. So sometimes initialize it, you'll have null, but very rarely do you want null returned for anything. Make sense? Yeah, at the very least, you'll throw an exception or an error or something. You got to tell the developer something or the user something, right? Typically, you only see an initialization of null, but never as like the end product because that's not helpful. My function has to be doing something because if it's returning nothing, then why is it running, right? Arrays holds an ordered list of values. These values can be anything: strings, numbers, objects, even other arrays. That's what they call multi-dimensional arrays. Sometimes you have like a big array, and then inside you'll have an array. We'll have 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, right? But you could easily have another array that has cat, dog, mouse, right? And then you could have another array that maybe it's an object, right? Maybe it's an object that has a key and it's hot dog and has another key one that's popcorn. I just went to the movies yesterday. There you go. There you go. Multi-dimensional array. It's an array of arrays. And the first array has integers. The second array has strings. What's wrong with my third array? It's throwing squigglies for a reason. My third array has objects with 2 key value pairs. What's wrong with it?
You're assigning the values wrong. The key values, you're assigning them in the wrong way using an equal sign instead of I forget what it's called. The two dots.
Colon.
Colon, yeah. There you
Yeah.
go.
Boom. There you go. That gets rid of my error. All this stuff is just there you go. So that's right. So that's an array. They could all be integers. They could all be whatever. But in JavaScript, they could be a whole host of different things, right? This could also not even be a string. This could be 3 point. Let's do pi 1, 4. Could be an integer. That could be an integer, right? Cool. All right. So that's arrays. Once you put something in an array, it stays in that place forever until you alter the array because it's immutable. Yes? You can rely on it always being there unless you alter the array. Think of an older person's pillbox. I'm not going to get into that example. You guys get the idea. Remember that everything in programming is zero based, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3. That's why days of the week 3 is Thursday. 0 indexed. Keep that in mind. Objects, this is the arrow that I was showing you. I was using equal signs, and it's not equal signs, it's colons, right? So this is a object. Objects in JavaScript, or well, not only in JavaScript, but in pretty much every programming language, is the most useful data type. Anytime you're solving coding challenges, typically the first thing you want to default to if you don't know the answer right away is, can you solve this using an object? And a lot of the time you can. And the main reason, if you don't understand my explanation here, that's okay. We will get into time space complexity later in the course, but you can access it. You can access things in constant time. What does that mean? Let me grab this here. I'm going to grab this example. Right? Look at this right here. Look at line 4. If I needed to find the element mouse on this list, I would have to iterate. And this would be kind of a nested loop, right? I would iterate over the inner elements and then the elements inside of there, right? So this is index 0, but I don't know if mouse is in there. So I would have to go in there and check 1, 2, 3. Oh, mouse is not in there, right? Then I go to element 2 or element 1, sorry, 0 index, right? And then I check cat, cat's not mouse, dog's not mouse. Okay, mouse is mouse, right? You have to iterate. What does iterating take? What kind of resource? It takes two different kinds, but let's just pick one.
A loop?
Yeah, it's loop, but it takes compute, right?
Okay.
Takes compute, right? Because you're checking this, you're checking this. Let's see how many checks you check. Well, you check with the outer thing, that's one. Then you got to check this one. Well, that's already 4, 5, 6. That was minimum 7 checks, right? But if this is animal and this is mouse, and I know the key is animal, I can just grab it directly. That took 1 check. I don't have to iterate. I can grab it directly. What's happening in memory is there's a hash, right? And you're just finding the hash and it points to a place in memory and it grabs that value and returns it, right? So dictionaries or objects used interchangeably in this context, right, are very efficient, right? And in programming, there's a famous format called JSON. It's called JavaScript Object Notation, right? That is just one big dictionary. Let me go to my favorite website, PokemonAPI.com. And this is kind of outside of the scope of this for right now, but let's see if I can get this to work. This doesn't give me the, wait a second, Pikachu. There you go. It doesn't show me what I want. I'll pull it up after our break. But what I'm going to show you there in just 1 second is that everything is returned in one big object, something that looks very similar to this. It's just enormous, right? And JavaScript object notation, it's a really, really popular way for applications over the internet to communicate. And what's the reason for that? Because pretty much every language can read JSON, right? So so applications pass JSON to each other across the internet, and they can pass information to each other, right? And work off of it, right? So, and that's just one big object, something very similar to this one. And when I show you that Pokemon thing, it'll return like a bunch of different Pokemons that I choose, and then you can grab the specific keys to grab certain values for that specific Pokemon. I mean, I gave you the Pokemon example, but the data can be anything. So super, super useful data structure. Objects. And there's 2 ways to get values from an object. There's, does anyone know? I only showed you this one here, but what's the other method? Anyone know? What's the other method in JavaScript to grab a value?
Just do the, well, for this case, it will be user dot animal.
Yeah, so user dot animal. So if I ran this properly, that means I should get mouse twice, right? In my terminal. There you go. Those are the 2 ways. One is called bracket notation. The other one's called dot notation. If you had to only learn one, which one would it be and why? Anyone know?
I'm gonna assume bracket notation because it's more common. Be more used.
Yeah, it might be more common, but that's not the rationale. What is the real reason here? That's a good try, though.
dot notation would be best. Well, two reasons. One, it's simpler. It's simpler to write, and then the other case, it's for misspellings or errors. In the way you can go about many ways of making an error for it. But also, in case a third reason is because when you're using auto completion, you can just place the dot there, and it will typically pop up what properties or keys they have within the object.
Okay, how do I grab line 4 with dot notation?
See, now, yeah, that would be best with bracket notation because you can't with the space in there. You're gonna need the bracket notation for that.
So what is the right answer, Cisco?
Bracket notation.
There you go. Computers can't read spaces. I don't know if you guys knew that. Don't add spaces. And sometimes people will name their folders like code, space, platoon, folder, space. Computers can't read spaces. Don't use spaces for anything. You'll never see this in programming, right? That's exactly what I aim to show you there. Now, this is not the only way you'll see this, right? Here, this is impossible, right? So if you only had to learn one, that's easy. It's always bracket notation. There you go. Works on 100% of the time. And I'll show you that with loops here in a second as well. Right? No spaces. So anytime you run into directories, or from now on, forever, right? What kind of casing does JavaScript use? It's called what?
Is it camel case?
Yeah, it's camel case. Camel case. Well, there's a specific reason for that. Well, the creators of JavaScript chose camel case, right? And if it's Python, it's snake case, right? And are things going to break if you don't use this casing? No. It's what's known as a convention. It's what normally people would do. And when I say normally, I mean everyone, unless you're a weirdo. Just follow the convention. You're not any different than anybody else. Just follow the convention for a reason. And notice, no spaces on snake case, no spaces on camel case, no spaces anywhere, right? Unless they're being used as a delimiter. Delimiter in Python is a tab over that means, hey, the following code is part of this class, is part of this function, right? The space must be incredibly intentional, and it must be doing something, right? You can't have just a space for the sake of having a space. That's going to break things. All right. So you'll see a lot in programming these camel cases, right? Or you'll see name of folder hyphens, right? You'll see name of other folder, super common. So, I mean, I guess sometimes you see some dumb things like name star of, star blah, blah, blah. Does anyone know why the last one is bad? Your IDE is kind of flagging it a little bit. I don't expect you to know this, but just if anyone knows it off the top of their head. So star is a wildcard character in programming, right? It means everything that matches with this, right? So typically they don't use it like that. So typically you only see either snake casing, camel casing, or underscores hyphens most of the time. Sometimes you see dots. I think I've seen dots before. Yeah, something like that sometimes. Rare, typically just hyphens or underscores. All right, so use that in all your folder naming, all your programming stuff going forward. No, that's it. So dictionaries, objects, super important because of JSON, and just they're probably the most used data structure in coding challenges. And anytime you're storing information, If you can store it in a dictionary, it would behoove you because it's fast. It uses less compute than anything else, right? And compute is expensive, especially at scale. Yes? Okay, variables. Variables are named labeled identifiers for storing values. Remember from math class X and Y, there are 3 types to declare, create variables in JavaScript. Don't use var anymore. Yeah, we don't use var anymore. Don't even worry about var. Yeah, it's not used anymore. Const, you'll use this if you want a value never to get reassigned. You'll see this a lot. You'll have like a const, like you'll have something like const, sorry, const. Like that. Typically, when you get to real applications, you'll only see things that are hard coded for specific environment. You won't see an API key, obviously, like that. If you're in testing, you might. But typically, they'll be at the top of the page and they'll be all capital letters. This says, hey, you're not supposed to change these, right? And they'll put a const next to them. So that's what const is for. Most of the time, you'll just be using let. Variable can be reassigned, but not redeclared. What does redeclared mean? Anyone know?
It just means the variable is called later in the function again.
Yeah, exactly. You can't just say, hey, some var, hello, right? And then you later down the file, you say let some bar yellow. Notice how my ID flags it. He's saying, hey, man, you initialized both of them, but they have the same name. You can't do that, right? That's why it flags it. However, if you reassign, notice how both go away. It doesn't flag that. You can do that. Okay, let variable be reassigned, but not redeclared. Do not redeclare. And you, guys, your tools are really good. VS Code is really good. All these IDs, PyCharm, all these, they're awesome. They're high speed. They're going to try to help you out. Just remember your ID is trying to help you out. Don't fight your ID. Your ID is probably right. Make sense? It's there to help you. This is a really important thing here. Are reserved keywords in JavaScript. You can't use this for anything other than declaring variables. This happens a lot. People will be writing in Python and they'll declare a variable and they'll be like, oh, str, hello. If you're writing Python, what's wrong with line 18?
It's not declared.
No, I just declared it. If it's Python, it's already,
Oh, you're not giving it the let const or
it's Python. I don't need to.
oh.
Str is a phrase in or a command function in Python.
It's a data type in Python, which
Data
makes
type,
it a
right.
reserved word, right? And you see that a lot, or sometimes in JavaScript, someone will be like, oh, okay, string equals some cat, right? The string is a reserved word in JavaScript. If you mess up reserved words in a coding challenge for an interview, you're definitely not getting the job. They're going to think, hey, this guy can't code. He doesn't even know his reserved words. And you're cooked, as the kids would say it. Is that fair? No. Is that what's going to happen? Yes. Make sense? So there's a lot of, I'm sure you guys are here because you guys think, oh, tech is really awesome. And I'm not here to lie to you. It is. It is awesome. But I don't think people ever necessarily talk about the bad things about it that often because people are enamored with it. But one of the worst things probably about tech is the interview process. It's long, it's painful. When you get your butt kicked, it feels worse than any other. We've all failed interviews, right? If no one here has failed an interview before, you're better than I. I have failed many, and maybe a lot of us have too. And those, I tend to shrug them off. It's like, ah, it wasn't me. It's okay, cool, right? But when you get cooked in a technical interview, it feels 100 times worse. I promise you. Hopefully that never happens to you, and you bat 100, right? You knock it out of the park every time. But when you get cooked in one of those, because you can't BS your way out of it, right? There's just a lot of, oh, I don't know, or I don't know, or you say something and it's not completely right, or you say something trying to guess, which I'm going to get to that in a second, and you're way off. Yeah. Okay, printing. I'll make a note about not guessing if I forget. That's actually a really important concept here. Printing, console log print in JavaScript takes whatever you give it and it prints it to the terminal. This right here. And what is this example using?
Say the question again. I'm sorry.
This example, what is it using? It's using something that we just discussed. Starts with an
Oh,
I or a
the
T.
interpolation.
Yeah, interpolation. So if I run this, it should say hello world. Yeah, interpolation, and this is just a template string. And that's just how you print something, right? This happens a lot. Function, some. I probably shouldn't have deleted it. That's fine. Some param. Return, hey. And then I'm just going to add, some param, whatever. Okay. And then people will do this. Oh, I screwed that up. Sorry. What's wrong with this function? If I run it, it gives me hey world. I can put it even a little space there. Make it the sentence, hey world. Okay. So what's wrong with this function? Is there anything wrong with it? What's weird about it?
If it ran, does it mean it's fine? There's nothing
I
wrong
don't
with it?
know. I don't know. I'm asking you.
Oh, snap. I'm gonna say there's nothing wrong.
Is this function doing anything? In the programming sense, is it doing anything? Oh, I'm asking this really poorly. Let me try to think of a better way to ask this. In the program, I don't know how to better explain this. In a programming sense, what is this function doing?
It's not doing anything. I mean, can you just really do that without the function, essentially?
Yeah, but I wanted to pass a
Like,
parameter into it. But is my function programmatically really doing anything?
No, it's not.
no.
No, it's not doing anything. What is it doing?
It's
Well, it's
just doing
taking
a
your parameter and it's just for the point of
Keep
printing it
going.
or
I
whatever.
can listen to you. Keep going. So what is it doing?
I'm having a hard time explaining it because I think I understand. I'm just um essentially, I mean, it's attaching that hey to the parameter, but so it says hey world, but it's only doing it trying to like it's not like really computing. I'm trying to think of the word.
You're right, Garrett. Yeah, you are on the right track. But I
It's
see
not
this
really like
all the
changing it permanently or anything. It's just printing it out that way. And I
yeah.
don't know. In my opinion, there's no point in the function
There is no
in and of
point.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not really
There needs
doing
to be more
anything.
substance.
Right? It's not really doing anything. And I think that's what a really important thing you have to understand of console log. Console log is for who?
It's for
Prince
us
image.
to kind of
It's for
test
the
it.
developers,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? The program itself will never need a print statement. No program you ever run will ever need a print statement. It doesn't do anything for the program. Programmatically, does nothing. You're better off not even running it, right? Print statements and console logs are strictly for the developer. So this function doesn't return anything. It's not doing anything. Now, if you return this right here, if you return this, now it's actually returning something, right? So now it's actually returned something, but then I run my function and then I see nothing in the terminal. And then people are weirded out. Well, I don't know if it's doing anything, right? Now it actually is doing something, but the developer can't see it. Why can't the developer see it?
No print statement.
Yeah, there's no print statement, right? And the right way to do it is just wrap your function call in a print statement, right? This wraps all of it. Conceptually, you're wrapping the entire function in a print statement. So its return, right, will be captured. So if I save this and I run this, right, you get your hello, you get your hey world. Sometimes I'll get this, right? I'll get like double console logs, and they're like, okay, I'm done. This works. And they run their function, they're like, oh, right? Hello world, and then they'll ignore the undefined. Read that for me. What happened here? What's the first hello world? That's right.
We're back to the problem where it doesn't really do anything. The function's not like really doing anything. It's
So what?
printing hey world, but then the actual thing where you put in the world
Okay.
is nothing
Okay.
because the function didn't do anything.
Exactly. Okay. So line 7, what's the output for line 7?
Say that again.
What's the output for lines? There's two outputs here. There's
Yeah.
hey world, and then there's an undefined. What's
Well,
the output for line 7?
line 7 is the undefined because the function is what didn't return anything to put in line 7.
Right.
That's how you read that. Now, it's important that you see this in its simplest forms, right? Because when it's time to really debug much bigger problems, you're going to have to go through a dozen files to figure out what the heck is happening, right? But it's important conceptually for you to see this here in 3 lines, 4 lines. Make sense? Yes? Okay. Boom, 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 boom. These are arithmetic operations. I'm not really going to, go too far into it. The only one that kind of modulus, what do you use modulus for? Anyone know? Typically, if you only use it for one thing, use it for what?
It returns what's left over from
Yeah.
the calculation.
Yep. What's left over from the calculation typically is mostly used to find odd numbers, right? That's the most common use case. The double asterisk is to the power. But I think JavaScript also has a built-in library called math. So you can import math, or you can use this for if you need to take the power of something. So this is just basic arithmetic. Not going to go too far into it. This one's important in JavaScript. What's the difference between double and triple equals?
Triple equals is strict equality.
Which means?
It's so I put it. So essentially it means that the data type and the value have to be the same.
Yes. And this is really, really important, guys, because in JavaScript, remember I told you it's the Wild West? If you do this and this, it's going to return the Boolean Ah, true. And this isn't true, right? But this only checks the value, and the value is the same. Now, if you want to check the data type, which both of these are different data types, one of them is an integer, one of them is a string, you need to add one more equals. Now this returns false, right? So in JavaScript, there's a golden rule. You always use triple equals unless you have a really good reason to use double. And typically, if you're using double, rewrite your code. It's poorly written, right? So you should almost exclusively always use triple equals. Make sense? So keep that in mind. This is not equal. Don't use this one. Always use this one for strict inequality. Always. Greater than, less than. Logical operator, this is and. That means, hey, you want both of these things to be true. If either of them is false, it will be false. And this is the or operator. This or this, if either of them are true, this is true. And yeah, same concept here. Only one of them has to be true to return true. You'll see this a lot. Both of these things, you'll see them in conditionals a lot. I think they're messy, but it'll be something like some Boolean and some other thing is true, and then do something, right? See this a lot. Or this could easily be an or, right? If one thing or the other is true, right? This ultimately will return a Boolean, right? And then execute, go into this if clause, right? If one of the things is true, right? So you see this a lot in conditions. But you also see the and when you get to React towards the end of the course, you'll see this a lot for displaying components, the and. So get comfortable with that one. Use that one a lot. All right, functions. Okay, I see that we have gone past the time. It's 6:38 p.m., guys. I just blasted you with a lot of stuff. Let's take a 10-minute break. Let's be back at 6:49, okay? See you in a little bit. Grab some water or something. Pause. Stop share. Did I pause the recording? I hope so. No? Remember we talked about JSON. I'm going to backtrack a little bit and give you that Pokemon API example. We're not going to get into APIs. You're going to cover them later. It's outside of the scope of this. But I just took this URL, this entire URL, and I made a fetch function, right? So I took this Pikachu, I took all of this, right? And here's my URL. And I'm just going to fetch that URL. And the only thing I wanted to show you is, hey, what's returned is just this big JSON object. What that means is just a big dictionary is returned. And whatever it is I want to grab from the dictionary, I can grab it as long as I know the key. And I know the key because I could just parse the dictionary here, right? So I just called it api.js. So I'm going to execute the file. And look at what's going to be returned to me. This giant dictionary. That's all it is, right? Inside this dictionary, there's a key called abilities, right? And inside abilities, the value is actually a list. It looks like a list that has two abilities that are just nested objects, right? With their own keys, with their own values, right? It even returns all of this, right? In just one big object. And remember, one big object can have a lot of keys that also have objects. It can be infinitely nested, right? It depends exactly what information you ask for. Now you could ask for a subset of this, right? By passing in more parameters. But right now I just pinged Pikachu, right? So it gave me all the information it has available. Look at that, name Pikachu, right? And these appear to be images. Let's get a shiny. These are just URLs. I bet I could grab them and get a shiny Pikachu here. There you go. It doesn't look that shiny, but that's a Pikachu for you, right? So there you go. Just one big object that's returned, and that's the closing parenthesis right there. Right? So there you go. JSON objects, direct access to values, very important in web development. Actually, yeah, in web development. So there you go. Let's go back to this. Get rid of this. Figure that out later. W3 schools, we can get rid of that. And we were at functions. Okay. And these are just different kinds of functions. This is the one you see me write. But there's also fat arrow functions, right? Something like this. We can do that. This is not going to have any impact at all. There's another way to write a function. And then you could literally just do the same thing. You can console log. And what's the name of the function? Just name. And you could pass in, it takes two parameters, num1 and num2. So you can pass num1 and num2. Why is this thing crossed out? It says name is deprecated. Okay, cool. Let's call it some func. Some func. Cool. When I run this, what's going to be my answer? When I execute this file, don't overthink it, guys.
Should be 3.
Yeah, it's just 3. 3, there you go. This is just another way to write the same thing. What's the difference between this function and this function? You know? Besides what they do, one adds and one, concatenates a string, but or returns a template string. But outside of that, what's another difference?
One is a constant
Yeah,
and the other one's not.
yeah. That
You
actually
also
doesn't.
have,
I don't know why they
you have
made
the
it that way.
integer versus
Yeah, it's a string. It's an integer. One has let, one has const. What about parameters?
Oh yeah, one has 2 parameters and one only has 1.
Yeah, one has one. So there really is no difference, really. Why did it, this should be this is a mistake actually. This should be const because
Becomes
you're not gonna rename your function, right? Right. So this should actually always be const. That's okay. Mistakes were made, and that's okay. And the other thing I wanted to give you here is this right here. It's just say hello. But if you actually only have one parameter, you don't have to actually even do the parentheses, right? And this will work. And then it would just say hello, and then Max. There you go. Hello, my name is Max. There you go. Works. You only need parentheses if it's more than one. Boom. There you go. Conditional logic, if statements, if else, if else, if else, if else. This right here. Let's try. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do this function right here. Say hello. And let's just do some conditional logic here. And let's pass in, we want to pass in A, B, doesn't really matter. If A equals max, console log I max. If B equals Jane, console log IJ. IJ. Else, console log not max or Jane. And I'm going to pass in What are these called on 913? I'm going to pass in what? Does anyone know the name of what I'm going to pass here?
Arguments,
Yeah. What is this called then?
parameters.
Yeah. Don't mix up the difference. that was a stupid way to describe that. If it's an argument, it's an argument. An argument's a value. A parameter, right, is a variable that holds a value. It's not same, same. You know, when you talk to your friends, they're like, ah, same difference. That applies to maybe other professions and amongst your friends. That never applies in programming. Does anybody know why?
Well, the same way that let and constant, they're both assigned variables, but they do different things. So it's not same.
Yeah. The
There is a
differences.
reason why we have a different thing. I mean, even if they, in most cases, can act the same, there's got to be a reason for it.
Oh, there is, and that has to do with
Always.
like the evolution of the language, right? That's
Right.
something that once you get in the field, you start understanding that the internet, right, is alive, right, and it's constantly changing, and there always be need for developers because things are always breaking, and you're always surprised how things work as well as they do because when you get in there, you realize everything's being, stitched together with duct tape and Elmer's glue. So. I just went off on a rant. What were we discussing? We just
Well,
spaced.
my point with saying what is even if it seems like same,
Yeah,
there's going to be that instant where there's a reason why that it exists instead of the other, and so understanding that difference, so it's not exactly same, even if most of the time you would use it is
exactly.
same. Like you
Yeah,
said, constant and let
One,
are 9 times out of 10 going to be very similar, but
yes.
it's not.
So you reminded me of exactly where I was going with this. The problems that you're going to be faced with are incredibly niche and very esoteric. You're going to find problems that are similar to yours on Stack Overflow, but you're going to come to realize that all those problems are very novel and they're very one of one, right? So when you're trying to solve those kinds of problems, you're going to realize you're not going to have a whole lot of help. You're not going to have a whole lot of help with all the LLMs. You're not going to have a whole lot of help sometimes within even your own team because the people that wrote some of that stuff are long gone, right? And the documentation is sparse or outdated, right? So you need to be very, very, very specific when you're describing things in programming, not only for the sake of trying to solve the problem as quickly as possible, but also for the sake of you being a new dev, trying to get help from your boss or your peers. You're going to come to realize no matter how big the company is, their development program is not very good, right? And sometimes you'll get very little time with your boss or peers are going to be able to help you out. And a lot of the time, you're going to be sending screenshots on Slack or Team trying to get bailed out about something that could be as simple as a semicolon, not a place. Or maybe you tried to call a permission that hadn't been declared yet. And you can't figure it out. It's crashing your entire program, right? So when you're describing problems in software, you need to be as specific, as accurate as you possibly can be, knowing that even a space out of place could crash everything. Does that make sense? Okay, so something as simple as what's an argument and what's a parameter, right? Don't screw it up. It's okay if you don't know it right now, but for the future, try to be very, very specific and very clear with the way you describe things. Okay, so yes, so these are arguments. So I'm going to pass in, let's just do lowercase. Max, no, let's do math and Jamie. If I run this function, what's it going to return?
Hi Jane.
No, it should say not Max or Gene.
Yeah, not Max or Jamie. What's a better way to write this? Anybody know?
Switch.
Yeah, but that's just a fancy if.
Probably could have. Well, I guess if you're only worried about Max or Jane only, then I was going to say fill in the exact name, but if you're only worried about those specific names.
This is a bad function that doesn't really do a whole lot, but I'm using this to really illustrate a point here. What's a better way to do this, right? This section talks about conditionals, right? Here's an if statement. Here's if this is true, do something. If that's not true, just do this. And this is just an extension of that, right? Check this. If this is true, do something. If that's not true, check this. If this is true, do something. If neither one or two are true, then just do this, right? This is simple conditional logic, right? And I just picked the most complex one, the one with three things, right? And I'm asking, how do you make this better?
By placing the not Max or Jamie first.
Not Max.
Would you use returns instead of
Yeah,
console logs?
I console log just for the heck of it. But yeah, let's try to fix that first. Why not? I could
Okay.
do that. Return high max. Okay. How else can I make this better?
Yeah, you just change the order of your conditional statements is what I was thinking.
Change the order to what? Is this perfect? Okay. Let's try this. Let's try to simplify this. I might have made this too complicated. Let's do 8. It's the same idea. I'm going to ask you the exact same thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I get you're
How,
asking how can we make it more efficient?
kind of like, what's wrong with this? What's a better way to write this?
Are you speaking of redundancy?
No?
No.
What's wrong with my conditionals? Or is there anything wrong with them? I'm only dealing with one parameter here, but it didn't really matter.
Less than 0. Oh, you only
All right, if you were in charge of writing this very simple function, this is how you would write it?
no, I would condense it, I guess, is into
How?
basically you make one check. You can do multiple conditional checks within one statement.
All right, so you want to do this? You want to do an and in here?
So you can do some number. If some number is greater than well, you can do if some number is greater than 10 or less than 0 first, and some number is less than 0. Then you can put, so this is the one, the last one is number is less than 10, but not negative. Yeah, you can put that right there. And and if not, whatever else you want it to return, you can say number is not less than 10 or is negative, whatever your
You're
checks you want.
confusing me. I don't. You want me to write what on line 3?
No, no, no. I want, so if you do and,
Here,
yes, there, yes. Some number
some num
is less than 0.
is less than 0.
Yeah.
That's actually making it more complicated, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's making it more complicated. That's not a
No.
condition that I'm looking for.
Oh, okay. Well, I was saying is just take the other ones out for now.
Well,
To
but you got to still return those statements, and there's so you still have the three things. Could you just
All right.
get rid of the else and put a return like further down? Like, because every time it hits it, well, no.
Do you need the else and else?
Right.
Do you need
Yeah,
those?
you don't need the last else. You can just, because there's nothing else. You can just put the return outside of the.
That's one. Yeah. Yeah. What is this known as? Do you know?
oh, you talk about that part of it. Yeah. Well, yeah, you put that outside.
I mean, you're just
That's
ending
good.
the function either way. So it's like if the if statement goes through and
Yeah,
nothing
but what
happens,
is it
it's
known
just going to
as?
run
What is
outside.
yeah, what is that known as?
I don't know what it's called, but we just simplified it.
Well,
It's called an implicit return, right?
yeah.
You actually
Okay.
don't need the else, right? You have a lot of conditional logic you can use, like this, for example. You don't need the else. You can just return if it doesn't hit the first if, right? Right. And for
So
longer
the else
version,
would only happen if you're going to do something besides return. Is that the case? Like
if you're going to do something else besides return,
on the else part, like if you're on the else, like are you going to do, and when would we use else? Or is it
never.
never? It's just kind of, okay.
No,
I
you
just
can use
want to
it.
know.
You can use it,
I
but
get it, but
it
it's,
doesn't really make sense to use it if you know what you're doing. Right? It's there as like, oh, check this, check this, check this. But if you know how functions work, right, and it doesn't meet the first one, right? And actually, this doesn't, I mean, you can use as else, but a simple else statement here would have made sense too. Right?
Mhm.
And that would have made just as much sense, if not more sense. Right? Okay, so I know that if the number is bigger than 10, it's returning right there on line 4. The rest of the code doesn't matter. It's bigger than 10, done. Right now, if it's returning on line 7, the number is less than 0. The rest of the code doesn't matter. It's a negative number. And if those two cases aren't true, right? So I know for sure that the number is less than 10, but it's not negative. There's no more code to run. You can return that. There's no checks to be done. The checks have already been made. Right. So conditional logic, yes, this is kind of the textbook way to do it. But when you look at code, especially if someone good wrote it, you're going to see a lot of implicit returns. You're going to see a lot of top level checks for outliers and then returning early because there's no point in the rest of the code if it doesn't apply to the parameters being passed in or the values being passed in, right? There you go. The worst thing you could do is pass something, right? It's kind of the example that I was giving you when people kept reassigning one of the variables. What's the point of continuing to run all that code if it's ultimately just going to exit and not do anything, right? The answer is don't do that. Just return early. So if you don't know how to do something, you can do it this way. But when you have an intuitive feel for how to write code, else statement becomes kind of useless. Just return implicitly, like line 10. Right. And right now it's kind of difficult when you look at code to see whether it's good or not. Eventually you start getting into like nuances of the way that someone wrote something. And you're like, oh, okay, that's really good. Or, oh, that's crap. Make sense?
Mhm.
Right. Not all code is created equal. And that's actually really high level programmers have a really big problem with Copilot and Q developer and a lot of these resources because as a statistical model is going to spit out like the statistical most likely answer. And most of the code on the internet, it's garbage. Make sense? So if you're a really high level programmer, Copilot is your nemesis. You know, because you wouldn't write it the way that I would write it, right? that level of high level code that a model could possibly be trained on is so small, you couldn't effectively train a model to write that good of a code. Make sense? Okay, so here we go. Example, let's do this one. This is just very similar to what we just did, right? How do you change this? What can you remove here?
The else.
Yeah, right. You don't need this. If this was inside a function, right, it would just be that. I guess I could tab it over or whatever. Right. If this was a function now, this is a function. What prints out if I run it? And I pass in 23.
It should be welcome to the bar and then undefined.
Is that what's going to print out? Anyone else? Guesses?
It's going to print out both of them. Welcome to the bar and come back when you're older.
Why, Cisco?
Because it's not returning. Well, the if statement is not going to stop anywhere. It's just going to go through that, spit that out, and then go down to the next line, which is basically, since you don't have a return value, the function doesn't stop there. It goes all the way through everything that's in there.
Yeah, very good. It's a little bit of a trick question, right? They're just console log statements, right? I'm not exiting the function, so it's actually going to run both console logs like that, right? There you go. And it's going to run that undefined at the end, right? Because your function's not returning anything. Now, this would be completely different if this was a return statement, right? If this is a return statement. Okay, what does this run actually?
That one should say, welcome to the bar.
That's it, right?
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. Cool. Welcome to the bar. What if that age was 12?
Then you're going to have to come back when you're older and an
Yep.
undefined.
Come back when you're
You're gonna
older
return.
and an undefined. Good. And these are just else if statements. You can have an unlimited number of else if statements. I wouldn't recommend it. If you find yourself in this kind of pattern, chances are there's a better way to rewrite it. Write it that way because that's the only way you know how for now. But eventually, if you start getting into long conditional logic like that, there's better ways to write it. I'll give this example here, right? Let's do this. Yep. This is this conditional that I just stole from there. Let's do, yeah, it doesn't matter here. Okay, so this is the check right here, right? Line 6, but this is going to return a what? This returns what kind of data type?
It's a bool.
Yeah, it's a Boolean, right? I sometimes people find themselves like this. This is messy. This is really long. This could easily be, right? This could easily be just is of age, right? This returns a Boolean too. And this could easily be both of those are still Booleans, right? And this simplifies to of age and of age and in China. That's more readable, right? These are just Booleans. And you'll find this in enterprise level applications. A lot of the variables that you have, if there's any kind of conditional logic, everything will be at the top, right? Your const, you won't see an API key, but this is just an example. It'll be capital letters and there'll be whatever. And then it'll be, all your important values here, right? Or it'll be a separate file and then you'll import them in and then they'll be used just simple as that. Because they don't have to read it, just read the name. It tells you what it is. Right? You don't want to read something really long like this. Right? No one has time for that. Make sense? So just small nuances like that will kind of like right now you're really early in your career, so it's going to take a little bit of time, but eventually you start getting into that kind of way of writing code. Okay, loops. Loops are very popular in coding. They're basically instructions for a computer to do things over and over again. The one thing that computers are really good at, doing the same task over and over again. As long as the condition is true, the block of code will continue to execute. When condition becomes false, the code after the end of the loop will be executed. How do you know when to use a for loop and when to use a while loop? Does anyone know?
The while loop, you want it to be able to keep going until the condition is met, essentially.
I know, but how can you tell that if you're going to use a while loop or a for loop? There's a specific rule that you need to keep in mind that tells you, hey, a while loop. Now, could you use a while loop for things that would require a for loop? Yes, and vice versa. Yeah, you could finagle it that way, but there's typically one golden rule. How do you know when to use a while loop and how do you know when to use a for loop? This is a really important thing for you to understand right now.
I want to say a while loop is when you have a specific value that is known, and the for loop is one you'll use when you don't actually know
You
what they
flipped it. You flipped it,
I
but
flipped.
yes.
Okay, yeah.
While loop is when you don't know how many iterations it's going to take. You don't know. A for loop is when you have the exact number of iterations. That's it. Now, could you switch it up and get fancy? Yes. Do you really want to? No. Just follow the rule of thumb. If you know how many iterations, it's a for loop. If you don't know how many iterations, it's a while loop. Pretty straightforward. And there's really no variation in that. Yes? So keep that in mind. This is known as an infinite loop here. Why is this an infinite loop?
There's nothing to stop it from executing.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing to stop it from executing. Let's go from the top.
The age isn't changing or anything.
Yeah, age is 12. So it instantiates this variable age to 12. It hits the while loop. Okay, it's starting a loop. It hits this console log that prints something. Cool. Finishes printing, goes back to the loop, Age is still 12. Print it again. Finishes. Goes back to age. Age is still 12. Prints console log. Goes back to age. Age is still 12. Prints it again. And it goes forever. Infinite loop. Slightly version, much better version, actually gives you a stopping condition. Same concept, except prints on line 3, then increments age 1. So on the first iteration, age is 12. Then it prints. Then age is 13, goes to age. Age is now 13, prints. When it gets to 20, right? Still less than 21, hits the console log, increments to 21. At 21, checks age. 21 is not less than 21, breaks out of the loop. Right? So there you go. While loop. This is the old classic for loop. So we have while loops, we have for loops. Easy way to remember what goes inside of a for loop is start. Where do you want it to start? Where do you want it to stop? How big of a step you want to take? Start, stop, step. In that order, every time. Right? Sometimes I think it's hard to remember it, and especially when people are like iterating backwards. Well, where do you want to start? The end. Okay, so that's string or r length minus 1, right? Where do you want to stop? As long as it's greater than 0. You want to go backwards, I minus 1, 1, right? Start, stop, step. Remember that? And you should be able to get it. So that's just a normal run-of-the-mill for loop. For in loop is actually used for objects if you want to loop over elements, right? Inside an object. So for in loop, there's one more loop that we haven't talked about, right? So that's a for loop. There's a for in loop. And there's one more in JavaScript. Anybody know what it is? It's a for what? Anyone remember? No one remembers.
Or of.
Yep. I don't know how to spell console log. Num. Does that work? If I run it, does that work? Let's see. There you go. For of loop. How do you know when to use a for of loop or when to use this loop? When to use this one, when to use the other. This one here doesn't really matter that much, but it just, as long as we're here. When to use this type of loop, when to use the other. Anyone?
Or of is one you want to use when you want to iterate through each and every value that's within the object itself, and then or the array, and the other one is when you want to try to actually, I guess, pick a specific point to exit out of the loop.
Oh, you're getting kind of close. But I need to be more specific. When to use this and when to use this. You actually don't need to know this one at all. But if you do know it, there'd be a reason why you would use this as opposed to this and vice versa. What is it? You got pretty close, Cisco, but not quite. Look at the difference. Look at both loops. One has something that the other doesn't. So it indicates that you would use this type of loop if you need something.
Oh, I see. A condition.
Now you can put conditions on both of them.
Hmm.
Look at it closely. What does one loop have that the other one doesn't? Something super important in programming.
Based on what you're typing there, does that have to do? There's no like length. It's just checking all the array. Does that have to do with it?
No,
Like,
it kind
oh,
of. There, look at my terminal. It prints both. I ran both loops and they printed the exact same thing. All right.
Right.
Look at it closely. What does one have and the other doesn't? Which indicates, hey, if you need this, use this type of loop as opposed to if you don't need this.
Maybe I'm not. I got a brain fart. I don't know.
If you need an index for some reason, use the second type of loop. If you don't need an index, you can just use line 3, right? Look at this. The index here is built in where you could get the index here, but that'd be a mess, right? Here you would have to do something like come array index of num or something like that, but that's unnecessary, right? Just use the regular type of loop and then you'll have it. It's I, right? And that becomes important, right? If you need to do a look ahead or you need the index for something, where the challenge is asking you, hey, return the index of said item, not necessarily the item, just the index, right? That's why you'd use this as opposed to this, right? When someone uses this, for example, in your applications, if you use this when this would have sufficed, it's because you don't know this. That tells me you are a certain level because you should know this. This is just lack of exposure. That's simple, right? It's just a loop, right? There you go. So just different kinds of loop. Do you ever need to know this one? No, everything will work with this one. But it's good to know that this exists. Looping through an object, you can loop through the keys of an object using a for in loop. That's what this is. People mix up sometimes for of and for in. In is for objects, of is for arrays. Keep that in mind. Java runtime node versus browser. Okay, this is kind of a little bit of abstract, so I'll try to do the best job that I can. Okay. So JavaScript, like it says here, on its own doesn't really do much. It is a full-blown programming language, right? But JavaScript runs on top of things, right? And in the browser, it runs on top of an engine, right? Called for Google Chrome, it's called the V8 engine. If you run Firefox, I think they call their engine like Spider Monkey, I believe, right? But it runs in the browser, right, on top of these engines that are written in C++, which is kind of irrelevant. But let me kind of give you a very like simple example, right? Has anyone ever run JavaScript in the browser before? No? Okay. Has anyone ever seen something like this? I'm just going to create an index HTML file here, right? I'm going to do, bang, enter. It's just going to give me some boilerplate code. And down here, I'm just going to write a little script. Script, is this right? Yeah, script, and then src, and then I'm just going to call it index.js. Okay, cool. And I can actually show this, and I mean, I could just do it here. I'm going to create a little web page using live server here. And I'm going to just show it in my browser. You'll learn this later, but hello world. And if you don't have this extension, feel free to download it now. It's called Live Server. You can go in here and you can just type in live server. You're going to use it later on. So if you have it now, that's fine. Live server right here. It's just an extension. Looks like that. So if you can download it on your VS Code, you can do it now or you can do it later. It doesn't really matter. All right, so I'm going to open this using live server, right? And this is my Hello World webpage. It's running locally right here. That's localhost. Okay, and that's hello. That's this line right here. It's just a tag. But if I open my DevTools, you go in here. I always press F12. I don't know what I'm doing here. Yep. Why is this not working? Oh. Just press inspect. I think my hotkeys are not working. All right, and then go to console, right? Have you seen anyone ever do this? No? Yes? Yes? No? Someone say something.
Never seen it before.
Okay, cool. All right, so this web page, it just says hello world. I have it locally. So I just launched it using this program called Live Server, and I'm now using the browser. But notice what I did here on line 10. I added a script tag and I actually added a file to it. I connected this index.js file, which is right here, right? And right here, I can do console log dot, yo, cats, right? And if I go here, there's yo, cats. What's happening here? I'm using JavaScript, right, in the browser, right? My JavaScript file, right, is being executed on top of Chrome's V8 engine, right? That's where it's a runtime, right? So JavaScript by itself doesn't have a lot of power, but if you put it inside a really powerful runtime like Chrome's V8, right, it gets a lot of superpowers and it can execute code on the browser, right? That's why JavaScript is so popular. It's kind of it's not kind of, it is the programming language of the internet, right? So I just showed you that, hey, I can use a browser and I can execute this like JavaScript code, right? I'm using all the powers of that runtime, right? Now, when people use JavaScript on the back end, what do they call it? Anybody know? So I just showed you that I ran it in the browser. Look at that. But that's just the console log. If I wanted to run like, if I just had like a simple array, right? And I ran let num of R, and I did console log num, and I saved it, and I run this. Am I going to get 1, 2, 4?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I can run code. I mean, it was just this console log initially, but I can run full blown code, right? On the browser. I can also run JavaScript. I ran JavaScript in the browser. I just showed you. Look at that. Browser. This is a browser. Ran it. I can also run it on the back end, and that's called what? Does anyone know?
Node.js.
Yeah, it's called Node. So I can use that JavaScript, right? And I can also run it on the back end on a server. So here, if I just, you ever wonder when you run a Python file, it's python.errorspy, but when it's JavaScript, did you notice that it's not javascript.index.js? It's Node, right? Because you need to tell it, hey, where to run on. Well, run on the back end. That's Node. If I run it here, I'm going to get the same thing, 1, 2, 4. There. It's the same language ran 2 different places. You can run it in the browser. You can run it on a backend server. Same language, different powers. JavaScript, I think, one of the few, if not the only one that can run like that, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it's very unique in that manner. Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
This entire spiel right here about, AST and tokens and runtimes, feel free to read it on your own. I don't think it's particularly useful at the moment, right? But if you have some time and are interested in a little bit more in-depth analysis of runtimes and how JavaScript runs, feel free to read it. I don't want to go into it because I think it's going to confuse you more than anything else. Does that make sense? But it's there. You know where it is. Feel free to read it, right? Really, the big idea here that I would like you to understand is that JavaScript is powerful, but it's only as powerful as it is today because of the runtime environments that it has the ability to run on, either in the browser or on the back end, that give it a lot more power and a lot more, it just gives it a lot more tools that it can use. For whatever reason, I always think of Tony Stark and Iron Man. Tony Stark is rich and handsome and a great actor and all that good stuff. But once he puts on the Iron Man suit, he's invincible. And that's JavaScript. Make sense? Okay. Maybe JavaScript is not as sexy as Tony Stark, but you get the idea. You get the idea. So, and really that's really the most powerful thing here, right here at the end. The runtime gives us access to all the features that make timeout, HTTP requests, JavaScript really useful. And then it kind of goes into it being able to run on a server via Node, and it talks about how Node is built, but that's outside of the scope of this. So here are your challenges for today. Linear search is the first one. We'll break out into rooms here in a second, but before we do, and before we open the rooms and you can get started on linear search. So what's gonna happen is I'm gonna break you out into rooms. You're gonna take a break after I break you out into rooms. Definitely take a 10-minute break, come back to linear search. And then I'll probably bring you in halfway through, go over one or two of the challenges, depending on how far you've gotten, right? And then you break out again, work on that, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. But before I open the rooms, if I even know how to do that now, breakout rooms, here we go. Questions. I know I've given you a lot of stuff. Now's the time. Any questions at all? I'll go ahead and stop sharing here. Dude, I just blasted you with a lot of stuff. You need to have at least one or two questions.
Well, as far as the challenges are concerned, does it matter which version we decide to work on, whether Python or JS?
No, do JS for now.
Okay, do JS.
Because this was a JavaScript lesson.
Okay.
Questions about anything that we've covered? We've covered a lot, guys.
I don't think I'll have questions about what we covered initially, but more like when I'm trying to do the challenges and I'm trying to apply it, I think like that's probably when the questions will arise.
Make sure to either ping me or make sure that when we come back, because this is going to happen, I'm going to cut you loose. You're going to work on this individually. I'm going to bring you back and then we're going to go over it. Make sure that you ask those questions then. Don't forget them, write them down. Typically, I Slack myself, which I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but I typically Slack myself if I need a reminder for something. That way I don't forget the question. So definitely keep that in mind. Anyone else have any questions about everything that we've covered? But you're confused about something, I didn't touch on something enough. How important is it understanding languages? And here's something before I break you out into rooms. If no one has any questions, I think many of you have probably heard me say this. Understanding your tools will help you become a good dev, right? To me, that's the minimum thing that you need to be good at when you get your first job. Be pretty good at the tools. Why do I say that? Because when you have this job, the writing code is actually the easy part. It's all the integration stuff that's hard. No one's ever gonna ask you, hey, how do you code this out? I don't know how to do it, right? The code's easy, right? It's like understanding how these architectures work and all these like third-party systems mesh together in your environment, not somebody else's environment, your environment. And why does it do quirky things like it does? Because it doesn't do it on anyone on Stack Overflow, but it does it in yours. So how do you guys manage that? And how do you fix that? Okay, those are the real hard problems you're going to be solving. No one's going to ask you how to do a for loop, right? You're not going to solve that at all, right? But you are going to figure out why your application, gets overwhelmed after 30,000 requests per second, right? And your load balancing isn't working properly. Like that's a complicated problem. Like that's what you're eventually going to solve. Yes. All right, guys, definitely take a break. I'm going to open all the rooms, take a break, and get started with, I believe, linear search it is. Yeah, drill linear search. Let me pause. Forgot to record that a little bit, but that's okay. We're continuing on. Okay, so this is what we downloaded, right? And we want to ignore node modules, right? Because look when you click on node modules, what's in there?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What's in there?
The package itself, the array equal package.
Yeah, the code that someone else wrote.
Right.
Right. So I can ignore node modules because the next person that runs my project, they can just install the package. I pulled it from the internet. They can too. Doesn't have to be on my repo. Right.
Right.
And they call these things package managers. npm install. Right. Place like this, where it's just a place where they hold a bunch of these packages. And these are just a bunch of packages that people have written, right? That you can import into your specific project. And again, they're just code, right? Uninstall, just a bunch of stuff. Python has the same one. Python packages. Yeah, there you go. It's called PyPy. I couldn't remember the name. I should know that, but I don't. And look at that. Look at how many files and packages there exists that I can download, right? It's Pandas one, probably. There you go. Pandas package if I wanted to do some math stuff. There you go. Data analysis toolkit. I can download this, and it comes with a bunch of code that someone has written that I can use in my project, right? It's code I don't have to write. There you go. That someone else maintains. Nice. Okay, so I can get rid of that. Okay, so you can ignore node modules. That's fine. So I installed array equals. Okay, cool. So let's go to linear search. And how do we solve this? Right? Let's look at the tests. And it's testing these three things in linear search. Right. So we have to pass these tests, right? So we write that function in here. All right. So how do we solve this? This is our function right here. Don't let the exports. This is being exported, right? So it can be tested. But this is just, notice this stub right here. It's just a function, right? So it's function value find. So how do we solve for these right here? It's just a linear search. I'm passing in this array of numbers 1 to 1,000, right? So what do I want to do here? What's the code that I'm going to write?
Well, the way I approached it was I created since it wants us to see if the value is inside or if the value is inside that array, we want to basically return that index for that value, the first index. If it's not, we want to return undefined.
Okay.
Okay. So I just created an if statement, if else statement inside that function.
There's something that comes before the if statement. Can't check it directly because you have a giant list of 1,000 elements. So you have to do what first?
That's odd.
Look at what's being passed in here.
Oh, well, so what I placed inside of the if statement was I used an includes for the array search through.
I'm glad you
So
brought that up. Includes is just a loop underneath. It's just a linear search. I don't want to kind of get into it right now, but we will touch upon it next time if you remind me. Includes is just a loop.
right.
Index of is just a linear search underneath, right? It's just tagging every element and saying, hey, what's your index? Right? So what do we need here? I just said it.
You need an index.
No, you can't just index it. You don't know where it is. And you don't want to look through every element. I'm not going to look through 1,000 elements. I need a what? Thing that computers are really good at.
Computers are good at computing. So
So doing
oh, wait, do you have a
repetitive.
return statement? Is that what? Oh yeah, there is. Never mind.
What do I need here, guys? I need to iterate over this array and check if the value is in there, right? It's just a basic linear search. So I need a what? Need a loop. That's it.
Oh, okay.
Need a loop. That's it. Let I equals 0. I is less than array to search through dot length. And then we're going to go element by element, right? And I'm going to check what here? I'm going to check if value to find is what? Is equal to what?
The index.
Not the index.
Value to find is equal to the value of
The
array that
value at that index.
at that
Those two
index.
things are not the same thing. When you say index, you mean index. When you say value at that index, that's a value. Those two things are not the same,
Okay.
right? So now I'm checking if the value is equal to the value at that index. If it is, on the very first instance, I want to return not the value, but the index. That's what it's asking, right?
Right.
Now, if that's not true, what do I need to return?
Undefined.
Undefined. Where does my return undefined go?
You can go on the outside or
Where?
outside the if statement.
Here?
Outside
Yes.
the loop. Oh, no.
Outside the loop. It doesn't go here, right? What happens if I leave it here?
Will it overwrite the return index?
No.
No, it won't. It won't finish going through the iterating through the loop. That's right.
And it'll exit after how many iterations?
One or it well
One.
as little as one. Yeah.
It's going to exit right there. On that first iteration, it's either going to exit because it hit the if statement or it's going to exit because it just hit line 11. It's not going to finish the loop. Here, it finishes the loop. And that's what we want, right? Remember when I told you don't really need else statements?
Right.
This is the example. Because I needed to finish the loop. And if it doesn't hit that return statement on line 9, then just exit. This right here should get me passing all 3 of these. So when I run this, I should get 3 trues and then the error.
Got you.
Let's see. And what do we have to run here? We have to go into linear search. We need to go into JS. Mind you, I'm in JS folder. I'm in LS here. And that test file, you can execute it with Node. So there you go. Linear search test. Just run the test file. Check if it passes. Let's see. So we have 6 tests here, right? We have line 4, 5, and 6 for linear search. And then we have another 3 array equals with linear search global, right? So there's 6 tests. So I run this test file. I only pass 3 of them. I only pass 3 of them, and then it goes into this error right here. And this error, I want to take a minute to apologize for the curriculum. There's something that we hadn't expected. Periodically, every cohort or 2, this will happen. Some of the code changed in one of the libraries, right? And that was causing the error. And if you go in here, the way that it was written, it must have been a different version than the version that we have now because it's failing, right? So what you needed to do, and I didn't expect you to figure this out, is add the default here. And that should have fixed it.
Okay.
Right. So now when I run this, this should recognize the array and it should give me, it should fail the next three tests because I don't have any code for it yet. So let's see, make sure we get rid of this, this error. I'm going to clear this. I'm going to run this. And it says, what error am I getting now?
That the linear search global function is not defined.
Yeah, it's not defined, which means it's not in here. That's because I don't have it. Right. So I just duplicated that. Right. I go to my test, and this is the thing that I should have, right? I should have this kind of linear search global, right?
Yeah.
All right. So linear search global. And what is this intended to do? This is intended to take what exactly? Well, let's look at our linear search, global linear search. Write a function. Linear globus that returns an array of all indices of the objects it searches for. All right, so now instead of exiting after the very first one, we want a list of all of them, right? So inside our linear search, I'm going to put this right here on the right, right? We need to do a linear search that returns a list of all the indexes. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So how can we modify this code? Because I pretty much just copied it and then just like changed the name, right? So
Right.
we want to return the indexes of everything that matches. So how do we modify this?
Well, first within that function, I would initialize an empty array.
Yeah, let's do that. How about let result array equal empty list? Okay, now what?
And then you want to let's see here where value 5. Then you want to iterate. You want to find the indexes within that array to search through and push them onto the result array, basically
Yeah,
the ones that match.
yeah, it's really not that different. That code stays the same. If it matches, it's going to go into the if block, right? And then I'm going to just amend result array push, and I want to push just the index, not the value at that index, but the index. So that's just I,
Right.
right? There you go. And then I need that loop to finish, and then I just return result array, right?
Mhm.
Now, if I run this, I should be able to pass all the tests, right? I should get 6 trues. There you go. One of the most common uh, iterations is obviously the linear search, right? It's probably the least one. It's not probably, it is the least efficient way to search through something, but sometimes it's the only way to search through something. That's why people try to avoid it and use dictionaries with hash values as keys, because it's a lot more efficient. It takes far less compute time. All right, so
Yep.
that's the answer to one. Questions about this one?
Nope.
What was the biggest sticking point on this one?
The setup.
The setup. Okay. Yeah, we need to do better with that. I would advise that you tackle the Python one on your own. Not today. Today's been a long day, but tomorrow I would definitely do the Python one, and then I would move on to the second challenge. I'm trying to pull it up right now. What's the second challenge? Is it 99 bottles?
99 bottles. Yes.
Yeah. Give a crack to 99 bottles as well. Umar will be your teacher on Saturday. I would actually ask him if you have questions on it to start the class with that. You have 8 hours. He has more than enough time to go over them. And I would give it a shot. Uh, Adam, what was the sticking point about the setup? Where did you get stuck?
I just didn't understand where it wanted me to install some things,
Uh-huh.
and I just got confused where I was supposed to install it, and I had a few errors. So I kind of just skipped over it, and that's probably why none of my code worked. But it wasn't actually writing the code that was the problem. It was just
Oh,
doing all of that. Yeah.
okay, so the setup should have only affected the last three tests. The first three tests, there was no setup. Why is that?
First three.
There were six tests. Only the last three tests required setup. The first three didn't require any setup at all. Can anyone tell me why?
They're not being compared to each other? Is that?
They're being compared. We just weren't using a what?
An
What the
external
heck?
module.
There you go, an external module or a library, right? All right, so this is a really common thing in programming where you'll install quote unquote dependencies or other code packages to help you build whatever it is that you want to build. This is known as bootstrapping. When you bootstrap a project, right, you pull in a bunch of libraries. When people say modules or libraries, they're just code that someone else wrote that you're importing into your package to make your development easier. Very, very, very common thing. If you wanted to build a Yu-Gi-Oh API to rival the famous Pokemon API, nothing stops you from doing it. You could do it, and then people can import that information into their applications and make a Yu-Gi-Oh app as opposed to a Pokemon app. Make sense? Okay, these packages, these libraries, another famous word for them is frameworks. Have you guys heard of React?
Yes.
Okay, React is a very popular front-end framework that was invented and it's supported by Facebook, right? They built it to make their development of Facebook easier, right? But they maintain that library and they do a great job with it. But they allow anybody to go in there and use it. They even allow anybody to put in SIM tickets for bugs that they find in their code, and the Facebook team will go in there and they will fix it because it's their library. They want to maintain it. They use it for Facebook. They want other people to have it too. Makes sense? So this concept doesn't go away. Like understanding what's happening in your files. This was a very like rough introduction. I'm sorry about that. I didn't know there was going to be an error on that file, and it wasn't an error to be honest, right? Because sometimes from cohort to cohort they'll change some of the libraries, right? They're where they're implemented, and that's on their end, right? If they changed it, right, and you wonder why devs have jobs, is because things evolve, and as they evolve, right, how they're being imported and some of that code and functionality change. Even some of the names sometimes change, right? And you'll notice this, you haven't probably noticed it yet, but you will, where you'll open an application and half the words of a file will be crossed out. Have you guys seen that yet? On your IDE, half the words will be crossed out, and then you hover
Mhm.
over the crossed out word and it'll be like, oh, it's deprecated. Oh, okay. Because that was Python 3.7. You're running Python 3.13, and what you are using is no longer supported. Congratulations. In order for you to get to the thing that you are going to fix, you're probably going to have to update those dependencies because they're not going to work nice together. Right. So now what you thought was a simple fix turns into, oh, I need to make this simple fix or update this feature and then update all of the dependencies that are deprecated so this application can run like it's supposed to. So on the next stand up, you're like, hey, I went to go do this, but all this changed. I'm gonna have to refactor. This is gonna take at least a week longer than we anticipated, minimum. And they'd be like, okay, do this, or okay, don't do that, do this. This is more priority. This is a higher priority, right? So that I'm sorry that you encountered what you did, because this is way too early in this class for you to do that, but it happens all the time.
I wish that was the error that I had that was getting me stuck, but I got crushed way before that.
Gotcha. Oh, super important thing, actually, now that you mention it, Adam, when you import dependencies, you always do it in root. Keep this in mind. This is something that people mess up a lot, right? If your main folder is linear search, it goes at root of linear search. So the entire project has access to those libraries, those files. Okay. Sometimes people will have, that's why I always say, hey, keep however you're going to structure your projects or your homework assignments, the curriculum, it's fine as long as you understand it, and just be very weary of nesting too many folders, because you get stuck with right now it's just a file. Okay. But then you have all of these dependency folders, right? Are they in the right directory? And you start getting yourself really confused if you don't have like a clean tree to work off of, right? Don't try to go 3 or 4 folders deep, man. That's going to get messy, right? You want to be 1 folder deep, 2 max, honestly. Does that make sense? Because it's hard to keep
Yeah.
track of that stuff. Okay, so remember, next time you download dependencies, it's always at root, wherever root is for you. Okay?
And did you use default with was that with parentheses or without at the end
Oh,
of?
no parentheses, just dot default. That's it.
Okay, okay.
All right, guys, that's all I have to you. I would definitely give that a crack. I mean, I know tomorrow's Friday, but I would try to give that a crack tomorrow and then have some questions for Umar. He'll be teaching Saturday.
All righty.
Okay? Have a wonderful day, guys.
Thank you,
Good
Garo.
night, guys.
Uh-huh.